And welcome to the podcast, everyone. This is Jason along with Jack. There you are,
This
Jack.
weekend.
And today we're going to be recapping NFL's Wild Card Weekend, starting with one of my favorite games that I thought this weekend was the Buffalo Bills against the Indianapolis Colts. And really, if you look at this game, you can see the different narratives here. I mean, just think about it. You got a quarterback in Phillip Rivers, probably on the way out, and you got this guy in Josh Allen who, I'm going to be honest, a year ago was a complete doubter. I didn't think he was going to be anything. And, go a year later, probably going to finish third for the MVP in the league. And, sure, the second half was a little choppy, and we get into that a little bit. But, I mean, Jack, if you just look at it, this guy is primed for success going forward, especially this week.
So here's what you think about with the Bills and Colts game. And the first thought that came to mind was, how about the Bills getting their first playoff win since 1995 when they defeated Miami 37-22? Hard to believe that it's been almost a quarter century since they won a playoff game. And if
It's
you look at
crazy.
the narrative with Josh Allen as well. I mean, in his first two seasons as the Bills starting quarterback, he just did not have very good statistics, and people were doubting him. And look, in his third year, he becomes an MVP candidate. In terms of the game itself, I mean, Rivers went 27 for 46 with 309 yards, two touchdowns. He was pretty efficient. Allen went 26 for 35, only nine incompletions, 324 yards, and two touchdowns. And he had 11 rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown. So you can see how Allen's rushing game became a bigger part of the Bills' offense as the season went on, and you could see it on display in this game. Let me know what your thoughts are about Allen and his rushing game and how it impacted the game itself.
Well, of course, he's great with his legs. He gets outside the pocket. You got to cover every blade of glass. They say that about Aaron Rodgers, the great quarterbacks. You got to cover every blade of grass on the field. But I mean, if you really just look at this game here, you look at it and you can see that Josh Allen, he's really taken a step forward. And the Bills team, man, it's always tough to get that first playoff win. The Ravens took them a few tries. They got it with Lamar. Um, you know, Washington maybe next year, but to get that first playoff win with that franchise quarterback, it's and to actually get his feet wet. It's going to be sloppy, as it was a little sloppy in the second half. But I think going forward here, we're going to see something great this week.
I think so too. And another thing you can look at from this game as well is, besides the rushing attack from Josh Allen, I mean, the Bills, where's your running game? 7 rushes for 21 yards for Moss. They had 3 rushes for 21 yards for Singletary. Well, Indy had 21 rushes, 78 yards, and a touchdown for Taylor, and 6 rushes for 75 yards for Hines. And you would think that Indy won the game based on their rushing statistics, but at the same time, Indy had some really big missed opportunities in this game. I mean, with less than 2 minutes to go in the second quarter, I questioned this call more than any call in the game. Indy elected up 10-7 to go for it instead of kicking a field goal to go up 13-7. And in my opinion, it was a crucial turning point in the game. They held the 10-7 lead. I mean, they came close to completing it to Pittman in the end zone. Rivers made a pretty decent throw, but they still just a missed opportunity there. You could have gone up 13-7. Maybe it's
Absolutely.
14-13 at the half, but you never know. Buffalo scored right before halftime. That was a momentum changing play. But would you go for it there, or would you have kicked the field goal?
Absolutely, you take the points. You're on the road. You're an underdog. You're playing a wild card game. Win or go home. You take the points. I know everyone says, "Hey, go big or go home," but it's a close game. You make it a field goal game going into the half. Instead, you know, Bills go down and get a touchdown, momentum swing, and even though the Chargers were able to, sorry, the Colts were able to claw back later on. So used to Philip Rivers being in San Diego, but it just wasn't enough. And those little things that add up earlier in the game, they come back to bite you in the end. And for the Colts, good season. Their future is a little bit uncertain. We'll see what they do with the quarterback, but just hats off to the Bills. Great win for them. Get their feet wet in the NFL in the
And
postseason.
here's what another big thing from this game that I got from it was the fact that the kicker for the Colts, who had been pretty clutch all year, ended up missing that field goal off the right upright, and the final score ended up being 27-24. So what do you know? Maybe the Colts, if they don't go for it on fourth down and goal, or maybe if they make that field goal, maybe it's a different story. Also, Josh Allen fumbled with about 3 minutes left, but the Bills ended up recovering it, and the Colts did get one more chance with the ball, attempted a Hail Mary, came up short, and we'll see what the future holds in store for the Indianapolis Colts. I think they're in a very tough position at the quarterback spot, considering Rivers might retire after this season, but He says he might want to come back, so I guess we'll have to just see what happens this offseason. It should be interesting. And for the Bills, it's a matchup with the Ravens, and we'll have to see what happens next weekend. Hopefully, they can continue this momentum ride that they've been on since they lost that game to Arizona midseason. They haven't lost since, so should be a good game next
And
weekend.
speaking of the Ravens, we got to talk about them because there was a lot of people coming into this game that said, "Oh, Lamar, he can't win a playoff game. He's not a real quarterback. He can't throw." And maybe he's still going to have to answer some of those questions, coming up this week against Josh Allen. Keep in mind they were drafted in the same class. I think Lamar's got a little bit of that chip on his shoulder going at the end of the first round. But look at this Ravens-Titans game. Titans last year come in and pretty much embarrassed the Ravens. I mean, sure, they had a lot of statistics last year. Pretty sure Lamar had like 500 yards of offense or something insane
Sure,
like that.
14-2 MVP, sure.
But, yeah, to come off a season like that, you have the bye, and then a hot wild card team comes in and just stomps you out like that. Yeah, it's got to be, confidence got to be shook a little bit. But great to see them bounce back with a win, and I can't wait to see this matchup. This is the game I'm circling this weekend. Bills-Ravens. Let's see it.
Well, you take a look at this game between Baltimore and Tennessee. Tennessee wins the AFC South on basically a wing and a prayer by Tannehill throwing it up to, I believe it was A.J. Brown last weekend to win a game in Houston on a game-winning field goal bounced off the upright. But Baltimore travels to Tennessee. Lamar, the story, he's 0-2 in the playoffs. They erased an early 10-0 deficit for him to earn his first playoff win. I mean, he looked awful on those first couple possessions, especially throwing that interception to Malcolm Butler. I was like, here we go again.
For sure.
Ravens having trouble.
But
and
that
then
48-yard rushing touchdown really, I think, ignited that team. Not so much just Lamar, but you could just see the energy and the momentum swing right there. And he took off. Nobody could catch him.
Exactly, and he had 16 rushes in the game for 136 yards and a touchdown. Very efficient. Dobbins had 9 rushes, 43 yards, a touchdown. And Baltimore, astonishingly, I mean, they hold Derrick Henry to 18 rushes for 40 yards. That's winning football in the playoffs. Tennessee, without Derrick Henry rushing, I mean, they just couldn't get anything going on offense, it seemed, this entire game after the first quarter. He had a 10-yard touchdown pass Tannehill did to Brown, but after that, they just couldn't get anything going. So credit to the Baltimore defense and the way they played throughout this game.
Absolutely. And I like Tannehill, but without his play action based on the run game, the threat of the run, I mean, he just isn't the same quarterback. And you can see it. That high-flying offense scored 13 points. It's just not going to be enough against the Ravens.
No, and what you see in this game as well is it just comes out again where Tennessee, they have not won a home playoff game since 2003 and defeated Pittsburgh in overtime. This is, we're talking, it's been 18 years since they've done anything in the playoffs in their home stadium, and they were upset by Baltimore in 2008. So it just seems that these teams, whenever they battle each other, it seems the road playoff team comes in and gets the victory. It's very strange how this works in the National Football League with these trends, but
That's why
let's
they
see
play
if
the
Baltimore
games.
and Tennessee see each other again next year in the playoffs. We would hope that this rivalry continues to be as interesting as it was before.
And we'll see what happens along those lines. But I mean, ultimately speaking, we kind of expected the Bills. Maybe you could have picked Tennessee, but Ravens were probably slight favorites in the game. In fact, I think the Ravens were 2.5-point favorites on the betting line. I don't know anyone who was picking the Browns to win, especially how they won last night, defeating the Steelers, in seemingly unprecedented fashion. I mean, going into just looking at it in hindsight, if you said Big Ben's going to throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, you'd probably say, all right, Steelers win by 20. You look at the box
Not
score,
so fast.
and yeah, it's a little bit of a different story, isn't it?
Well, here's the context behind Cleveland winning into Pittsburgh, and this is how crazy it is, a statistic. They won their first game in Pittsburgh in their last 17 tries, and they ended a losing streak that dates back to the 2003 NFL season. Pittsburgh loses a home playoff game as the higher seed for the second time in the last 4 seasons. The last one, they were defeated by Jacksonville. Heavy underdogs were the Jaguars coming in, and the Browns, obviously underdogs here. I think it was 5.5 points maybe. They were underdogs, but they come in and they just basically they punched the Steelers in the mouth. I mean, Cleveland finished in third in the division, but they had just faced each other a week before. So maybe this was just Cleveland was prepared to see Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh comes in, clearly rusty, Pouncey on the first snap of the game, shoots it to the moon. Big Ben's like, do I fall in it? Do I fall in it or do I not? I don't know. Next thing you know, it's 7-0 Cleveland 14 seconds into the game, and that was pretty much all she wrote at that point. I mean, I feel like you took a little bathroom break, came back, it was 28-0. It's like, what happened here?
It's crazy how fast these things turn. Mayfield, efficient numbers, 21 for 34, 263 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, Roethlisberger, he threw the ball 68 times. Have you ever seen that happen in the playoffs with the team winning and he throws 68 times? No
Ugh.
chance. No chance there.
It's got to be close to a record. 68 passing attempts. I mean, it's just crazy to think about. In the beginning of the season, Pittsburgh, they were running the ball. James Conner, I traded for him in fantasy because I thought they had something. And of course, as soon as I trade for him, they decide the running game is outdated and we're just going to throw it 60 times with 38-year-old Big Ben. What can you do?
Here's what you got from Pittsburgh in this game, too. You get from James Conner, you get 11 rushes for 37 yards and a touchdown. You would think, okay, maybe you rush the ball 11 times, maybe 11 attempts is okay for Pittsburgh, but they have had no form of a running game for weeks. It just shows up again. They have to rely completely on Big Ben's arm. Man ends up throwing 3 interceptions in the first half, which led to 21 points for the Browns, plus that turnover.
Yeah.
On the first play of the game, the snap goes over his head and they score a touchdown, 28-0. You're not going to come back from that.
And you see these interceptions, they're coming off of tip passes at the line, short little screen passes. And what happens is when you can't run the football, they can stack the box up front. They can put 8, 9 guys in there. Because even if you pass it, they're going to be little short curl routes, little screen routes, little slants over the middle. You can just drop 10, 15 feet back. You're right there. You got zone coverage. You got cover 6. You got it covered. And the problem with not being able to run the ball effectively is it just allows them to stack the box every single play, regardless of what they're going to do. And ultimately, you got guys on the defensive line for Cleveland jumping up, tipping passes in the air because they know Big Ben wants to get it out quick. It's just a recipe for disaster. You can't win in the NFL that way. That's why they went 1-5 to finish the season, and why if they don't make some serious changes, they might be in trouble next year as well.
You would think so, and Cleveland might have finally turned around the narrative that they can't win in Pittsburgh, especially because they did it in a playoff game. And you got no one cares that Juju Smith-Schuster, had 157 yards and a touchdown, considering Big Ben was throwing the ball
needs
all
to be
over
quiet.
the yard.
You can't be up there. This is one of those unwritten things of sports. When you are the favorite in a game, you can't be out there, lollygagging at the other team, saying, "Oh, it's just the Browns." What did he say? Like he doesn't see like a uniform; they're all like gray or something. So just a bunch of nonsense about the Browns, and they're already an underdog. They're already hyped up to beat you. You throw more flame into the fire. It makes no sense, But maybe he'll have a nice offseason on TikTok. Who knows? We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, you'll see. And you also had Nick Chubb. For Cleveland, had 4 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. But I want to talk about a play that totally changed this game.
Oh, this is the 4th and 1 play, isn't it? You're talking about the 4th and 1.
So the situation is Pittsburgh had just made it 35-23. They forced Cleveland to punt on a 3-and-out. Pittsburgh gets the ball back late in the third quarter, early fourth. They're driving the ball down the field. It's 4th and 1. And instead of going for it, Tomlin elects to take the delay of game penalty and punt the ball.
And they're right around midfield, aren't they? They're right around midfield at that time.
They're at 46, their own 46-yard line, and they elect to punt the ball.
I mean, isn't that beginning of the fourth quarter as well? I mean, it's like
it was early fourth.
It's like, what are you doing? You can't expect your defense to get out there again. They've been out there all game. At some point, you've already gotten yourself in a position. You're down 35-10 at the half. You understand that if you're going to win this game, you're going to have to do some unprecedented things, take some risks. And I don't consider 4th and 1 from midfield a risk, especially in that situation. That's common sense. I would go for that every time. So
exactly.
The fact that they can do that,
even if you try, like maybe the team knows you're going to run a fake punt, but still, if you try something there, you prevent Chubb from even having a chance to score that next touchdown. Like,
of course,
imagine you make the game 35-30. This is a game. You're talking about a ball game.
The Cleveland said thank you very much when they punted it, and they went right down the field, got the screen pass to Chubb, and it was over. That was all she wrote. It's just remarkable.
Also, Cleveland has a running game and Pittsburgh doesn't. That's how you would sum up this game more than anything else. I mean, Kareem Hunt, 8 rushes, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nick Chubb, 18 rushes, 76 yards, and they defeated him 48-37 with a garbage touchdown late in the game. And also, when you score 31 points off turnovers in the NFL, generally you're going to win the ball game, and that's generally what I got out of this game is just the Steelers' too many mistakes.
And I got to tell you, even though this game wasn't close for pretty much, the entire game, there's a couple moments where maybe it looked like it might be remotely competitive. When you look at the long-term landscape here, what it means for the future, Browns look like they're trending upwards. Looks like they might have a chance to win that division. Ravens don't look like they're going anywhere. The Bengals are going to get Joe Burrow in a top 10 pick next year. They're going to be good again. or at least better than
I
they were
think
this year.
I mean,
Steelers could
as you
find themselves towards the bottom of this division if they're not careful and they don't rebuild properly here.
Yeah, if they don't, I think they also need to make a decision on Roethlisberger this offseason and see what they have maybe in the future with some other quarterbacks. Maybe we even
Well,
look
we
to
know
the
one thing
draft. I'm
for
not
sure.
sure.
Mason Rudolph ain't the answer, so they're going to have to look elsewhere.
Neither is Duck Hodges. That's for darn
Oh,
sure.
man.
Considering they went 8-8 with those guys in one of the elite defenses in the NFL
Hmm.
last year. But that being said, also the Steelers went for two twice and they failed it both times. 35-16, 42-29. Instead of putting the points on the board, I mean, it would have added a couple extra points, maybe a little change in the game. But
At that point, it didn't really matter. The more egregious thing was the 4th and 1. You're talking about a difference of 2 points in the game. They lost, by over 10. If they had gotten that extra possession and potentially those extra 6 or 7, then maybe we're talking about a game. But instead, we're talking about, Cleveland all the way. And, snap that road playoff drought. I think it was 8 in a row they had dropped on the road. Just remarkable to see. Poor Detroit Lion fans. I think you now have the longest playoff drought in the NFL for a road playoff win. But
yeah, I think they sit there since earlier than it might even be earlier than 1991. I can't say it for sure, but I know for a fact that one of the times they went to the NFC Championship game, they lost in Washington in a road playoff game. That might have been the closest they've gotten in a long time. So Detroit Lions fans, you'll just have to hang in there. Maybe
hang
your
in
time
there.
will come.
Came for Cleveland.
Oh
Never
boy.
thought we'd see that. Maybe next 10 or 16 years or so, we might have something. But I mean, there were other games on Wild Card Weekend too, weren't they? I mean, sure they weren't maybe as surprising. Although I do want to talk a little bit about this Seahawk-Ram game. I actually picked the Seahawks to win this game, and shame on me for thinking that Russell Wilson could carry an entire team. So I don't know if you picked the Rams or not. I certainly didn't see it. I saw Jared Goff with a broken thumb, not even starting, and I said, "There's no way." But they found a way
Here's where
with Sean
you
McVay. So
here's where
yeah.
you sit with the Seahawks and Rams, and you talk about it a lot in the regular season because these two teams see each other twice, and when teams see each other twice, they always say the third time is generally the time that the team that had lost previously is usually going to end up seizing the momentum, and that absolutely happened here. Considering Seattle, they just had lots of missed opportunities in this game. They made it. They threw a pick six on a screen
Oh,
pass. I
that's
believe it was the first
they
one
pulled that
this
stat
year.
up on the board yet. First one of the season. I mean, it was just a terrible execution. Looked like backyard football if I was throwing to you out there. That's what that looked like.
Sure seems like it. And look at Russell Wilson throws it to DK Metcalf. They score a touchdown, I believe, to make it 13-10. And you're thinking, okay, maybe the Seahawks are starting to make something of this game. But then Jared Goff just comes in. He comes in for Wolford, who had been hit hard previously in the game. And he takes control of the offense. And look at that. The Rams actually put 30 points on the board. I mean, who would have thought that the Rams were going to put up 30 points? And kudos to that defense, especially starting with Aaron Donald.
He didn't even play most of the second half. They still got it done. You got some question marks going into next week as well with Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, of course. Hopefully those guys can play. You want to see best against the best. I still don't think fully healthy Rams team beats the Packers this week, but you know what? At least they have a shot. I don't think if you have no Aaron Donald, no Cooper Kupp, and injured Jared Goff, I don't see how they're going to pull out a win. But best of luck to them and good job on the win this weekend. Certainly didn't see that coming.
Absolutely. Best of luck to the Los Angeles Rams. Maybe they can make the type of run they made in 2018 and try to make the Super Bowl. But wishful thinking for them going into Green Bay. We'll see what happens next week.
You know what else was a little wishful thinking was Taylor Heineke, the GOAT. He's being proclaimed the future, the franchise. Tom Brady was on the sideline.
We got people saying he's better than Daniel Jones already, and he's played one game.
Let's relax a little bit. Daniel Jones had a good first game too, but I mean, some of those throws he made in that game were just absolutely top tier. Like those are things you expect from Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. So you see Brady on the sideline of that game. He's like, "How's he doing that?" this guy 6 weeks ago was taking differential equations at college. It's unbelievable. Look at his math degree, and now here he is throwing dimes in the NFL. Not sure what kind of equations.
Here's what you look at with the Washington in the playoff situation too is, they have a remarkable story with their coach, first off, who fights cancer, and they end up winning a division title. Chase Young proclaiming he wants to see Tom Brady because obviously he's going to be an elite pass rusher in this league. But in terms of game flow, I mean, he's slinging the ball all over the field. Just the problem with Washington is their defense could not stop Brady in that Bucs offense, even at times where It seemed that the Bucks were off pace a bit. Godwin had a terrible drop. I think they had a drop late in the game in the end zone that cost them, so they had to kick a field goal. But then in the end, they actually got the stop on Washington's final drive to get the win up there in Washington. Obviously, Washington had a losing record this year. Nobody expected them to win, but it was still a good game. You know, they kept it close, and I think Brady and Tampa are going to give the Saints a run for their money next week. Let me know what your thoughts are on that, Jason.
Oh, that's the game of the week in my opinion. Now, I still would rather see the Bills Ravens game. That's my personal game of the week. But I mean, Tom Brady versus Drew Brees. I mean, that is as good as it gets. Divisional weekend. Saints have kicked their ass the last 2 times they played them. This time around, we'll see what happens. But I mean, I expect it to be a close game, come down to the wire, and may the best future Hall of Fame quarterback prevail.
I mean, you certainly don't think it's going to be 38-3 again, do you? I sure
Oh,
don't.
hell no. It's going to be a lot closer than that. I think this comes down, maybe even an overtime game. Who knows?
It very well could. We also had, let's see, who else do we have next weekend? We got another good game between the Browns and Chiefs that I think will be a pretty competitive one to people's surprise.
And perhaps, but I think you're neglecting the biggest game of the weekend, the game that you picked, that you were dead wrong about, and that being the Bears going into the Dome in New Orleans.
You just had to bring it up, didn't you? My Bears pick. You had to.
I received a few text messages during the game saying, "I knew it, I knew it." Next thing I know, I look up at the scoreboard, it's 21-3, and I'm like, "You knew what?" So what did you know, Jack? What did you
Apparently,
know?
I knew nothing. You know, the Bears score one touchdown with 0 seconds left remaining in the game.
I mean,
down 21-3.
Did you know that their receiver had his eyes closed, running down the field, wide open for a touchdown?
Yeah, I mean, any receiver going down the field on a trick play like that, the guy's got to look for the ball before he looked away from the ball.
That's got to be the best throw of Mr. Trubisky's career right there. I mean, no, there isn't a lot to pick from, but that's a beauty right there.
I mean, Jason, in terms of that point in the game, the Saints had gone ahead 7-0, but the Bears were driving and they had a chance to score a touchdown and make it a closer game there. And the receiver he could not make the catch.
For sure.
For the playoffs.
Saints missed the field goal, momentum up in the air. Bears totally have seized it, taken a lead there. That would have been huge, but instead, you got the result pretty much everyone was expecting. A low-scoring game, but the Saints were able to put up enough points, get the win. Easy enough for them. They're going to go on and have a much more difficult opponent this week, and we'll see what happens on that front.
You see Sean Payton getting slimed at the end of that game. Could you believe it? He actually participated in something relating to Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon game was great. I mean, I don't know if you were watching it on CBS or Nickelodeon, but they had the slime out there, the SpongeBob on the goalpost. Yeah, it's just great.
SpongeBob on the goalpost, quite a distraction for a kicker, huh?
But I mean, all in all, I think it was a great wildcard weekend, one of the more entertaining ones we've had in recent years. And, I just can't wait for next week. Anything you want to add to the show here before we wrap it up, Jay?
Well, I think that's why they call it Super Wildcard Weekend, for one thing. And one of the things I'm going to be looking forward to next weekend during the Baltimore-Buffalo game is which quarterback is going to get it going in the run game. I think that's going to be one of the biggest factors in terms of the Buffalo-Baltimore game. But I look forward to next weekend. Should be interesting, all these divisional matchups, and maybe there will be some upsets, but we'll have to find out. And it was nice chatting with you about Wildcard Weekend today, Jason.
Yeah, maybe we'll be back in a few days with our picks for divisional weekend. We'll see how that goes. But until next time, guys, have a good one.
Yeah, take care.